Hello everyone, I'm Adam Ebert and welcome to Can I Teach It, a show that explores the teachability of pop culture across mediums. Today's episode is on Olivia Rodrigo's Sour.
This book is filled with beautiful prose. This film's third act's a bit on the nose. This album features just one hit, but can I teach it?
With me, Mr. Ebert. So for some context, Olivia Rodrigo is an 18-year-old actress, singer, and songwriter from Los Angeles, California. She came to prominence on the Disney Channel show Bizaardvark, which I had never heard of until now, and more recently, High School Musical, the series on Disney+. In January 2021, she releases the single Driver's License, a song that details the heartbreak a teenage girl feels as she encounters the teenage rite of passage that is getting your driver's license, but in the aftermath of a breakup. It is worth mentioning that a lot of Rodrigo's success comes from her songs being featured on TikTok, with Driver's License being featured as a single and various other tracks being featured from her debut studio album, Sour, which was released this past May. That debut album has seen an incredibly positive reaction from critics, listeners, and me. So let's talk about it. Brutal is the opening track of the album, and there Rodrigo addresses the difficulty of being a teenager in a relative manner of speaking. She wants her struggles to be regarded as authentic and legitimate instead of getting written off by older folks. Many adults will often scoff at the troubles of a young person, but Rodrigo wants to make it clear that one's younger years are anything but golden. From there, the album details the variety of emotions in the aftermath of a breakup. Trader posits that while the narrator's ex didn't cheat on them, the means by which they went about the breakup were still unjust. Driver's License, the mega hit from the album, couples the teenage milestone of getting your driver's license with the melancholy feelings of not being able to share that moment with someone you love. The song Deja Vu is all about retreading aspects of an old relationship in a new one and whether that relationship matches up. Good For You, a tune reminiscent of Hayley Williams and Avril Lavigne, expresses the shock of the narrator seeing her ex move on with such speed as she toils to get over the emotional damage of the breakup. From there, the album features more tracks in which Rodrigo airs a variety of feelings about the relationship in a manner that often reads as high school level maturity, nonetheless presented in a complete and creative way. But then, Rodrigo concludes the album with Hope You're Okay, a track that features Rodrigo detailing different people she's crossed paths with and have lived admittedly harder lives than she has. This is a moment where the songwriter finally decenters themselves and aims to sympathize with the individuals she's describing. It's a nice moment of growth at the end of the album that makes the entire experience worthwhile, even if it is a bit abrupt. With all that being said, let's talk about how would you teach it? So in terms of how would you teach it, option number one is essentially comparative analysis between albums. Have students compare how Rodrigo structures and presents her breakup album with how other artists have done it over the years. Have students look for the similarities and differences in how Rodrigo presents her breakup, but also how Rodrigo presents things that are representative of our modern culture, particularly Generation Z. Brutal, in particular, is a track that frames contemporary teenage life as something that's not nearly as glamorous as adults might make it out to be in retrospect. Some classic breakup albums that you can have students take a look at include Lord's Melodrama, Dashboard Confessionals, Places You Have Come to Fear the Most, Kanye West's 808s and Heartbreaks, Alanis Morissette's Jagged Little Pill, The Cure's Disintegration, Carole King's Tapestry, Fleetwood Mac's Rumors, and Taylor Swift's Red. Even though some of these albums lean a little bit older, I think it's always great for students to see that something someone is saying now is very similar to something that artists have said in the past. Option number two is comparative analysis as well, but between capital T texts. As I've stated in previous episodes, capital T text essentially means that text should no longer denote just novels, poetry, and short stories, but films, albums, and video games as well. As teachers forge ahead into new eras of education, we must revise what a text is and what a text can be. With this option, you'd have students look at more traditional coming-of-age texts that you can compare Sour with, considering essential questions like what defines the teenage experience, How do the traditional teenage milestones help shape that teenage experience? And finally, what does it mean to come of age? As you and your class read, watch, or listen to the text I'll mention in a moment, aim to highlight what each text expresses about the teenage experience, coming of age, and teenage heartbreak and breakups. Here are some texts to consider. William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, Perks of Being a Wallflower, the film Edge of 17, Nikki Giovanni's Resignation, Emily Dickinson's Proud of My Broken Heart, Margaret Atwood's Variations on the Word Love, Sylvia Plath's Mad Girls, Sarah Teasdale's I Am Not Yours, and Gwendolyn Brooks's To Be in Love. Option number 3 is something I'm calling the driver's license writing project. The track driver's license details the collision of a major breakup and the milestone of the narrator receiving their driver's license. I think it's so interesting in execution, as Rodrigo points out that these major milestones don't occur in isolation from what's happening in our personal lives. So with that, have students write about a personal milestone like their first job or a key birthday or getting their own driver's license, but frame it with what's going on in their personal life at the time. Obviously, this works better for older students, but something like this could be a great opportunity for students to be reflective as they look back at key moments in their life. So something else that you can have your students write about are fabricated short stories that include that same collision about milestones in personal lives. Have your students develop characters and create conflicts that those characters encounter at key moments in their lives. This could lead to something as straightforward as a character asking their crush out on a date before they take the SAT, or something as outlandish as aliens invading during graduation. Nonetheless, the driver's license writing project provides students with the chance to be creative, thoughtful, and reflective. So, as you consider the options I've presented, let's talk about whether or not you should teach it. So as for the question of should you teach it, I think language is a big reason why some of you perhaps should not teach this. There are several F-bombs dropped over the course of the album, and my response to that is twofold. One, your students are probably already listening to this or have a familiarity with it. However, that listening is being done outside of your classroom and not as official work. So if your class is reading or listening to something with foul language, naturally you would make administrators and parents aware of that. But two, there are always clean versions of these songs, and the removal of foul language doesn't detract from the actual content of the writing that Rodrigo has done. Also, another reason to potentially not teach this is that it seems so timely right now, as we currently find ourselves in the summer months, but when we come back to school with something like Sour in the fall or even the spring, it could potentially seem like you as a teacher are just now getting caught up on what students are into.
How do you do, fellow kids?
So language and timeliness are definitely two reasons you may not want to teach this. But I believe that for what it is, Sour is a great text to use as a scaffold for other potentially more complex texts. So much of the work that I've done on this channel discusses connecting the new to the known, and having students practice a range of skills on an album like Sour and then moving into more traditional or more complex texts can make for a very engaging learning experience. And with that, let's wrap this thing up. All right, folks. So as always, please be sure to leave your thoughts and reactions in the comments section. I'm also always looking for suggestions of topics and media to discuss in a future episode. So please be sure to leave those suggestions in the comments as well, if you have them. And please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. You can find me on Twitter at Mr. Adam Abort and on Instagram at Can I Teach It. But until next time, happy teaching.